Hey everybody, welcome back to another battle report. This is a 4500 game of Ogre Cards and Saurian Ancients, played on the 3rd of September here in Suzhou, ahead of our tournament which is coming up in a couple of months. I'm running the Saurian Ancients list, Tim is running the Ogre Cards list. These are two lists that are being refined, sort of work in progress if you like, for possibly running in our tournament. So there's the list for you. Pause if you want to take a closer look. Let's get on to deployment. Okay, so this is deployment, and let's just talk you through what we can see on the board. A unit of bombardiers here, unit of bruisers. This is a substitute for 2 yetis. The 2 saber-toothed tigers are here. This is a unit of tribesmen, another unit of bombardiers, unit of scraplings. This is the unit of mercenaries. This substitute for the Mammoth Hunter on a Tusker. Unit of tribesmen, the Khan is right there. Unit of bombardiers here. Another unit of tribesmen. Another unit of yetis here. Another unit of bruisers here. And the Tusker cavalry out on the flank. On my side, 40 skinks here. 15 here. We've got a unit of caimans here. This is a Stygiosaur. And then you've got the 3 veterans here, the one in the middle is the general. Taurosaur here, another Stygiosaur here, unit of caimans here, and unit of skinks here. Okay, so this is Vanguard then. I've got no Vanguards, so Tim's got free reign on the Vanguards. He's had to manoeuvre around his saber-tooth, one or the other. Tiger over here, so a little bit of wiggling there, but basically the Yetis have moved up here and here. That's the end of Vanguards. I finished deploying my army quite a bit before Tim actually, so I was guaranteed the first turn. Okay, so this is my movement phase then. Move the skinks across here, just using the hill for cover here, protecting these skinks, hoping to come around the side and be a bit of a nuisance here. This unit's not moving. The caimans and everything is basically sort of moving up, but not getting too far up. These mercenaries have Swift Stride. The Mammoth Hunter has Swift Stride. So what I'm hoping to do is to keep the Tusker cavalry busy with a unit of skinks. Maybe keep the mercenaries busy with a unit of skinks. The Khan's unit busy with a unit of skinks. And then I'm thinking I can maybe get these guys each taking on maybe one of these and the scraplings, and basically what I'm hoping to do is take out all the little bits and keep the big bits busy for as long as I can, really. So over here I've moved these skinks up just a smidge. This is still a long charge. I'm hoping to bait Tim into it and waste a turn of their movement. Keeping the caimans, they've moved up a little bit, but they're still fairly far back. I want the yetis to come forwards and then I can charge them. So I've got those in range for my Swarm of Insects spell here, so that's why that's there. Likewise over here, Swarm of Insects ready is what I'm thinking on these yetis. So that's the end of my movement turn 1. Alright, so end of my turn 1 then. I did manage to get Swarm of Insects off on the yetis, but didn't do any wounds. That was very depressing. Caused 1 wound on the yetis over here from shooting. And I got Awaken the Beast on these caimans here. These yetis are Swift Striding movement 7, so it's not inconceivable that this unit could make this charge. And I don't want to flee, so I've just buffed them up to toughness 5. That's the end of my turn 1. Okay, so end of Tim's movement 1 then, and he has pulled off 3 charges. He tried to charge here, tried to charge at this unit of caimans with his 2 saber-tooths and his yetis, and this unit of tribesmen. The tribesmen failed, but the other 3 units got in. The tribesmen only went 1 inch. But anyway, big charge here in the middle, so a good start to the battle, good fight there. Other than that, things are just sort of manoeuvring into position. Tim looks to be fairly dominant on this side of the board. I look to have a bit more going on this side of the board. So that's the end of Tim's movement 1. Okay, so end of Tim's turn 1 here then. So his bombardiers over here got 16 out of a possible 17 shots on my Stygiosaur, but then remarkably did 0 wounds. So That was unexpected. And in the middle of the board here, the Caimans ripped apart the tribesmen and stomped on the Sabertooth, leaving one Sabertooth to flee. It did, and they didn't catch it, but they've closed the gap here, so I can either go after this one or go down here. They also caused the Scraplings to flee, and so they're sort of fleeing through this block here, which is quite nice because it's going to give me some cover against these bombardiers here, potentially. So that's the end of Tim's turn 1. Okay, so end of my movement turn 2 here then. So I declared a charge against the tribesmen. I didn't want to give Tim the opportunity of fleeing with these units and then fleeing with this one. So I thought I'll declare this charge and just see if he holds. And he did. So I've gone in there. What I thought might happen though would be that if they fled, then I'd declare this charge with the Caimans first on this unit and then possibly, I don't know, maybe be able to follow up with the general or something like that. I'm not sure. Anyway, he held, so that's why they're there. That was the only charge into combat. I'm picking and choosing my battles a little bit here. So I've put these 3 guys together because this guy's an absolute monster. He's got 4+ regen. He's got a 1+ armor save. You can't hit him with better than strength 5. He is strength 5 himself. He's on a Tusker. He's an absolute beast. So I'm putting these 3 guys together to see if 3 of them can take him out. I've moved the Stygiosaur just out of the arc of vision here. That's why the viewfinder's there. So you just can't quite see him with the bruisers. So I'm going to maybe try a bit of shooting on there. Brought the Skinks up onto the hill just so they could possibly charge down onto the flank. Not very good in combat, but they're not so bad on the flank. Skinks here just to prevent this unit from going after my Stygiosaur, which means the Stygiosaur can come up and threaten these units, maybe bait it into a charge. So my Tarasaur has moved over here onto the side because I'm concerned that there's too much weight on this side of the board. And we're jostling for position still here. I'm still trying to bait Tim into a long charge, and I'm happy that he's going to possibly be charging here in turn 2, and I'll flee. And so I'm happy that we've still got this big distance here, so that's working out nicely. That is the end of my movement 2. Okay, so end of my turn 2 here then. So I did 1 wound on the Bombardiers with the Swarm of Insects over here. 40 shots against the Bruisers here did nothing, but the Stygiosaur did come in and took out 1 with his breath weapon, so that was good. And in the middle left-ish of the board here, the Tribesmen only did 2 wounds, so that's a slight underperformance from them, but they should have lost, and they did, and they broke, but I wasn't able to catch them because he ran an astounding distance. So that's the end of my turn 2. Okay, so end of Tim's turn 2 here then. So the Tusker Cavalry have charged at the Skinks have fled, but Tim has elected not to redirect it to the Caimans. Probably expects them to flee, which they probably would, to be fair. This unit here has charged at this unit of Skinks, and the Mammoth Hunters made it into these 3 veterans in the middle. The Mercenaries charged the Stygiosaur, which fled, causing them to fail a charge. And that's it for charges. Movement is ganging up on the Caimans here, and just generally sort of moving for position here and there a little bit over on this side. I think also Tim declared a charge with his Yetis perhaps against my Stygiosaur, and I think that was then. I think he took a few wounds from the breath weapon, which is why there's just 1 there, and then I think he failed his charge, maybe something like that. Anyway, that's the end of Tim's movement turn 2. Okay, so end of Tim's turn 2 here then. Yes, I'm just checking my notes. I did get 3 standard shoot wounds against the Yeti because I used my breath weapon, so I was right about that. The Bruisers took a few wounds. I don't know if you noticed the picture before, but took a few wounds from the standard shoot that they declared against these Skinks, which I think I forgot to mention. and then the skinks managed to actually finish them off, because they took 4 wounds from the standard shoot, and then there was only 2 wounds left, and just got a little bit lucky, really. 7 wounds on the Caymans, who didn't flee, didn't panic, but anyway, there's been quite a bit of damage done to that unit there. Over on the other side of the board, the Caymans over here took a couple of wounds, and the skinks broke in the middle of the battlefield here, and Tim successfully restrained and reformed to face my Stygiosaur. This combat in the middle here, he scored 1 wound against one of my veterans, but I scored 1 against him. I think this is going to go fairly well. I've simply got more wounds than he has, and I've obviously got my BSB in range as well, so this is just going to be a big meat grind, really. So that's the end of Tim's turn 2. Okay, so on to my turn 3 then. I managed to get a charge with the Caymans against the Bruisers here, and a charge with the Stygiosaur against the Yeti. I wondered whether Tim might elect to flee, but for whatever reason he decided not to. So yeah, there you go, that's fine. Other than that, I have moved the Tarasaur ready to get a flank charge here. And the Skinks have rallied over here, so they're going to carry on being a nuisance. The Skinks have rallied here, so they're going to carry on being a nuisance. And the Stygiosaur has rallied here, so the positioning of this 18-inch BSB is quite important in the middle, really. And these Skinks have sort of manoeuvred, swung themselves around, ready to advance onto the hill if I want to. That's the end of my movement 3. Okay, so end of my turn 3 then. In the magic phase, I got +1 toughness on the Caymans, who were going up against the Bruisers, so that meant they'd be wounded on 3s rather than 2s, and you can see that they managed to dispatch the Bruisers, and they overran into the Yeti, but unfortunately, due to the angles and how close they were, only 1 would get to attack the Yeti. I got Swarm of Insects off on the Saber-Tusked Tiger, but that was dispelled, which meant that the Skinks had to finish off the Tiger. 40 shots actually only caused 1 wound, so that was probably the right choice, really. Drawn combat in the middle with the Mammoth Hunter, he inflicted another 1 wound on me. I did 1 more on him, and then I did some reforming so that he still... Yeah, so that he still had 3 in base contact, but it would make it harder for the angles for the mercenary veterans to get in. This one is actually at the back because he declined the challenge, which is why he's there. So that makes sense. What else have we got here? So 2 wounds on the Yeti over here, but he held because in spite of charge and 2 wounds, he passed his leadership test, because this whole army has got re-rollable leadership because of a very, very, very overpowered big name, which gives everything in the army list re-rollable leadership, which is absolutely insane. You can kill the character carrying it and they still benefit from it. It is totally mental. Anyway, enough of that. That was the end of my turn 3. So just reflecting on this, then I've realised that this is sort of an illegal reform, really. It wasn't a reform. The character declined the challenge, but I shouldn't have actually moved him to the back, I've just realised, because the mercenaries could have got a charge there. Whether Tim would have gone after it or not, I'm not really sure. Anyway, he decided to go after the Stygiosaur, which fled again, and didn't quite run off the board, so that was good. Good position over here. He has got a flank charge over here with the unit of bombardiers on my Stygiosaur, but the tribesmen can't get in because the Yeti is in the way, can't close the door, and I can't close on him because of the tribesmen, so that's all good. The Tusker cavalry have decided to stop chasing the Skinks and have started to kind of wheel around here so that they can get into combat with the Caymans, possibly on the flank there. And you can see that the big tribesman with the Khan has gone after this Skink, because when they rallied last time, they rallied in such a way that they would get in the way of a charge. Couldn't couldn't make the double move into this unit here. The gap was too small, so quite happy that the Skinks are taking the attention of this unit for another turn. So that's they're doing really well. So that's the end of Tim's movement turn 2, other than to say, of course, that these units are just ganging up on my Caymans over here. That's the end of Tim's movement turn 3. Okay, so end of Tim's turn 3 here. Then the Caymans have taken a bit of a beating from the combined shooting of this unit, but they didn't panic and they stayed where they were. The Yeti died over here, which caused the Caymans to drop out of combat because they couldn't slide over into base contact with the tribesmen, so they were able to reform. And the tribesmen, no, not the tribesmen, the bombardiers rather, did a few wounds on the Stygiosaur, but because the damage done to the Yeti and a couple of wounds back, it didn't break in combat, and then it passed its leadership test to reform, so they're no longer on the flank. So yeah, I would consider that fairly successful. That's the end of Tim's turn 3. Sorry everybody, I forgot to mention that the grind continued in the middle there. So the general accepted a challenge this time, and nobody did any wounds to anyone, so that was a bit slow and a bit boring really. So on to what will be my turn 4. I declared a charge with the Tarasaur on this big unit here, and Tim actually decided to flee. Distance was on his side. I think he was concerned about the impact hits. I'm not sure that was the right thing to do. But anyway, that's what he did. So I redirected into the side of the mercenaries, but failed the charge, which is why the Tarasaur is right there. Other than that, I don't think I actually made... Oh, I declared one charge, beg your pardon. After I'd reformed over here, the Caymans went into this unit of tribesmen over here, and the Skinks came up here and blocked this unit of Tusker cavalry, being a right royal pain in the backside. Over here, the one Cayman that's left moved to the side here so that it can possibly threaten this unit if it somehow manages to survive. Probably won't, but there wasn't anywhere I could send it, so I thought I'll just increase the distance away from these guys, if nothing else. Stygiosaur over here has rallied, and that is about it. I think these Skinks have actually moved up a few inches to do some shooting because they were out of range against the mercenaries. That's it. That's the end of my movement turn 4. Okay, so end of my turn 4 then. Got 2 wounds on the mercenaries here from shooting with the Skinks, so that was good. Came and smashed through the tribesmen. I'd used my predatory roar over there, so that was good. And that was pretty much it, actually. Other than the... Oh, this is quite important. Can't believe I didn't write this down. The Mammoth Hunter took 2 wounds from my general, and he died. So, yeah, took a while, but 3 veterans can beat a Mammoth Hunter on Tusker Cav. There you go. That's the end of my turn 4. Okay, on to Tim's turn 4 then. So he's charged at the Skinks with the Tusker Riders. He can only get 1 in because the angle I put them at, so I was perfectly happy with that. And he's rallied with the big unit in the middle here, but he's faced them against my general here and against the Tarasaur. He's got a charge here against the Stygiosaur. I'm right near the board edge, so I've got a hold. Did a stand and shoot, but didn't get anything from it. Over here, he's moved this unit up, presumably to threaten the Skinks, expecting perhaps to finish this unit off with the combined shooting of these 2. So that is the end of Tim's movement turn 4. Okay, so end of Tim's turn 4 then, and the Bombardiers and the Scrapling shooting managed to kill off the Caymans. Over here, on the other side of the board, the Skinks were beaten broke, ran 11 and were chased 10. So that they're keeping the Tusker cavalry busy, so that's lovely. The mercenaries smashed through the Stygiosaur and reformed, so they're now facing my Skink horde here, so they're in a fair bit of trouble. That's the end of Tim's turn 4. Okay, my turn 5 here then. Apologies for the photo. I've chopped some skinks off at this end of the board here. But anyway, the skinks continued to run, but they didn't run off the board edge, so that gives them something to keep on chasing. In the middle, we had a bit of a multi-pile-on charge here. I charged with the Tarasaur first because I wanted to see whether he would flee or not, and if he did, I wanted to be able to chase him with the faster unit. But then Tim quite wisely realised that because the veterans were coming in from this way, if he were to flee from them, then they'd get caught by the Caimans on this side. So he decided to hold, and all my charges made it in. They were mostly on swift striding 7s or 6s on 2 dice, so that was fairly predictable, I suppose. And I managed to get a charge off against these bombardiers here with my Stygiosaur. On this side of the board here, I've reformed. I didn't move all the models because it would have taken forever, just to be steadfast here. And the skinks have just done a bit of manoeuvring over here, but they're basically hiding behind the hill because they're not really going to take on the shooting prowess of the bombardiers. Not worth it. So that's the end of my movement turn 5. Okay, so end of my turn 5 then. It was an absolute slaughter in the middle. The Tarasaur did 6 or 7 wounds just from its impact hits. The veterans did a similar kind of number. The Caimans helped out. By the end of it, there was just the Kargan and I think 1 tribesman left. He broke, ran 2 inches and was caught. The veterans reformed here, just in case I get a chance to threaten the scraplings, really. Over here, the bombardiers did, I think, 1 wound against the Stygiosaur, but it beat them. The Stygiosaur did really well, actually. It hit with all 4 of its attacks and then wounded with all 4 of its attacks. So that was a fairly massive overperformance. And that, I think, was about it. Yep, that was it for my turn 5. Okay, so end of Tim's turn 5 then. Sorry, end of Tim's movement 5 rather. So the Tusker Cavalry charged off the Skinks. Skinks are finally dead, but you know what? It's turn 5 and those Tusker Cavalry have scored 150 points. So I am perfectly happy with that. The Scraplings failed a charge against the Stygiosaur here, and the Mercenaries came in here and hit my horde on an automatic charge. The Bombardiers just manoeuvred into position for some shooting. So that's the end of Tim's movement 5. Okay, so end of Tim's turn 5 then, and the Bombardiers managed to shoot off the last wound on the Stygiosaur over here, and the Mercenaries managed to break the Skinks. Their cold-blooded leadership 5, they were steadfast, but that only is the equivalent of about leadership 7, so yeah, there was always a 50-50 chance thereabouts that they would break, and they did, but they didn't quite run off the board edge, so there is still a chance there. That's the end of Tim's turn 5. Okay, now I've only got 1 photo for my turn 6, because all I did was move. I declared a charge at the Scraplings with the Tarasaur and the veterans. Scraplings predictably fled. I wanted them to flee. I wanted them to flee from the Tarasaur and then possibly flee again from the veterans, but it didn't send them that far. Over here, the Skinks failed their leadership test to rally, so they ran off the end of the board. But I've just moved these Skinks here out of the vision of any of these units, just moving them up. So that's the end of my turn 6. Okay, so end of Tim's movement phase then, and the Scraplings have ran off the side of the board. And that was it for Tim's movement, other than moving the Bombardiers into shooting range here. If he can randomise the right shots and he gets lucky, he might take out this veteran here that's on the 1 wound. He hasn't moved the Tusker Cavalry because they can't do anything, and he hasn't moved the Mercenaries because they can't do anything. So we're closing up the game here. That's the end of Tim's movement 6. And this is the end of Tim's turn 6, so he got his shots off. He did actually cause a wound on the veteran, but his 1+5+ managed to save it, so that was the end of that. And that was the end of the game. So it ended up being a 12-8 victory to me. Tim did 2,100 points worth of damage. I did 3,026 points worth of damage. But yeah, 12-8 is a very respectable score. Take nothing away from Tim. He is so much better than he used to be. I mean, if you just go back sort of 4 or 5 battle reports to my old games against him, I was winning sort of 18-2, 19-1. He got a 10-10 draw last week and a 12-8 this week. He's played really well. I really like this list that he's got. This whole MSU thing really works. Even when he's losing, he's not losing big, and it has the potential to really sort of mess you up really. This army list. So yeah. As for my army list, I'm fairly happy with the way it performed. I think I made a mistake putting the 3 veterans together for that Mammoth Hunter, because he was issuing challenges. I was declining, so I was always losing one of my veterans, and he was only doing like 1 wound a turn to me. So I think I might have been better actually just letting one of them face off against him. If I'd have known he was only going to be doing like 1 wound a turn, I'd have probably just let him get on with it really. And that would have freed the other 2 up to go and maybe chase down some bombardiers or tribesmen or something. But it wasn't to be, and eventually they saw him off, so that was all right. I think I changed this army list since the last time. I used to have Saurian warriors and Rampedons in it, but the Rampedons just kept dying. And the Saurian warriors, and a lot of people talk about them and say that they're really good chaff, they're hard to kill, what hunts them, blah, blah, blah. That's all very good and well, but the problem with Saurian warriors as chaff is that your opponent charges them in their turn, and the warriors are tough enough to stick it out for a turn, which means they fight again in your turn, and then they die, and then your opponent gets to reform in your turn and charge out in their own turn. So they kind of give away a reform. I'm much happier with the Skinks than I am with the warriors. They're predictable, they're more manoeuvrable. You don't have to worry that they're going to hang around too long, and they're generally a nuisance. I think I need to put a Cayman in that big unit of Skinks though, because Steadfast on a cold-blooded 5+ is just nowhere near as good as Steadfast on a cold-blooded 7, leadership 7 rather, not 5+, leadership 5. So yeah, few sort of minor tweaks here. Caymans I thought did really well. They saw off a unit of Yetis and the 2 Saber Tusks, and then they took out a unit of tribesmen on the left side. On the right side, they took out a unit of bruisers, and then they were involved in that big combat that took out the tribesmen and the Kargan. So I'm really happy with the addition of the Caymans in place of the Rampedons. They're just much better in this army. The Stygiosaurs obviously have synergy with the +1 toughness, and they benefit from the predatory roar. So yeah, that's kind of worked out nicely. I'm much happier with that in this list. Yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say, really. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be playing again soon, and maybe we'll see you then. Bye-bye.